She didn't know his name. That was the first thing Ethan Cole noticed about Victoria Hargrove. Not her pink blazer that cost more than his monthly salary, not the way her blonde hair caught the lobby light like something staged, not even the small gold rings stacked on her fingers that caught a glint every time she dismissed someone with a wave. What he noticed first, on his very first day at Empire Tower, was that she looked straight through him, not past him, through him like he was glass. "Move the car," she said to the air somewhere near his left shoulder. Her eyes were already on her phone. She hadn't looked up. The black one's blocking the entrance. The black one was his Corvette. He'd parked it in the loading zone for 30 seconds while he transferred equipment to the security booth. Standard procedure. He'd already been briefed that the CEO arrived between 7:42 and 7:58 every morning, and that the loading zone was hers during that window. He was 4 minutes early. She was 6 minutes early. Nobody had told him that. "Yes, ma'am," Ethan said. He moved the car. She walked into her tower without a single glance back. That was November. The leaves were still on the trees. Commander Ethan Marcus Cole, United States Navy SEAL, active duty, and currently on a classified assignment embedded with a private security contractor protecting federal witnesses and persons of interest. That was the full title. The assignment was simple on paper. Empire Tower, New York City, 18 months minimum. The building housed 3 federal prosecutors, a witness in a major organized crime case, and a senator's daughter who'd been receiving threats since her father's committee hearings on defense contracts. Ethan's actual job had nothing to do with moving cars, but he moved the car. He was 31 years old. He'd been in firefights in 4 countries. He'd pulled a wounded teammate out of a burning vehicle in Kandahar with a compound fracture in his left forearm. He'd spent 16 days in a surveillance position in a Colombian jungle eating protein bars and not showering. He had commendations. He had a Purple Heart. He had a scar along his jaw from a knife fight that the official report described as a training incident, because the truth would have required 17 classified documents to explain. He moved the car because the mission required it, and the mission required that nobody, including Victoria Hargrove, knew exactly why he was really there. He pulled his key from the ignition and spun it once around his finger, a habit so old he didn't notice it anymore. Then he walked back to the lobby, nodded at Marcus on the front desk, and went to work. The first month, she called him you. "You, hold that elevator. You, is there parking validation? You, what time does the south entrance open?" He always answered. He always answered calmly, with exactly as much information as was needed, and not one syllable more. He was professional. He was pleasant. He smiled the way he smiled at everybody. The wide, easy smile that his mother said made him look like he was always in on some private joke the universe had told him. Victoria Hargrove never once smiled back. In the second month, she started calling him security. "Security. I need someone in conference room B before my 8 o'clock. Oh, security. The camera on floor 32 has been blinking. It's distracting. Security. Tell whoever parks that blue SUV to stop taking the executive spots." The blue SUV belonged to Daniel Reyes, the federal prosecutor on the 28th floor, and he was legally entitled to the executive spots under his witness protection arrangement. Ethan explained this to facilities management. They explained it to Ms. Hargrove's assistant. The SUV kept parking there. Victoria kept complaining. Ethan kept absorbing the complaints without explanation because the explanation was classified. He spun his key and moved on. The first time she humiliated him in front of other people, it was January. A delegation from a Singapore-based investment group had arrived for a site visit. 7 men in very expensive suits, accompanied by a woman who translated, and 3 assistants who existed to carry things. Victoria met them in the lobby herself, which was unusual. She typically met people on her floor. Ethan had been notified of the visit in advance and had positioned himself near the entrance to monitor the group's arrival. The Singapore delegation saw him first. One of the men, the lead investor, Mr. Tan, 60-something, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, stopped to shake Ethan's hand. "Good morning," Mr. Tan said. "You are security chief?" "I'm on the security team, sir," Ethan said. "Welcome to Empire Tower." Mr. Tan held the handshake a beat longer than protocol required, studying Ethan with what felt like genuine assessment. "You look like a man who has been in difficult places," he said. "A few, sir." "Good. The world needs those men." Victoria arrived in the lobby 30 seconds later in her pink blazer and beach shorts, her shiny heels clicking on the marble, her gold necklace catching the light. dressed like she'd just walked off a Miami beach and happened to own a skyscraper. She assessed the situation in one glance and moved to intercept. "Mr. Tan," she extended her hand with a CEO smile, the one that cost nothing and promised everything. "Victoria Hargrove, I apologize for any confusion my staff may have caused." Mr. Tan looked mildly puzzled. "No confusion. Your security officer was being welcoming, of course." She turned toward Ethan with the first direct look she'd given him in 2 months. "That's what he's paid for. Could you please make sure the executive lounge is cleared for our use? The regular staff shouldn't be up there during the visit." She said it in the tone of someone asking a piece of equipment to perform its function. No malice, no awareness, just the particular blindness of someone who has never, in her adult life, considered whether the help had feelings. Mr. Tan said nothing. His translator said nothing. Ethan said, "Yes, ma'am," and walked toward the elevator. Behind him, he heard Mr. Tan say something quietly in Mandarin to his translator. He didn't need a translation. He'd been in enough rooms to know the sound of a man quietly reconsidering someone. He rode the elevator up alone. He spun his key twice. The elevator hummed. He was fine. He told himself that a lot. Fine. He was fine. The mission was fine. The job was fine. He'd grown up in Baltimore, third of 4 kids, son of a man who drove a city bus for 30 years with the kind of quiet dignity that didn't need an audience, and a mother who taught 3rd grade and believed that every slight the world offered you was either an opportunity to educate someone or a chance to demonstrate that their smallness couldn't reach you. Ethan had inherited both of his parents' versions of grace. He'd joined the Navy at 19, not because he had no options, he'd had a partial scholarship offer from 2 universities, but because something in him needed to know what he was made of in a way that classrooms couldn't answer. He'd found out, repeatedly, in conditions that he still occasionally dreamed about, in ways that required him to sit on the edge of the bed for a while before he could get back to sleep. The SEAL teams had given him brothers. They'd given him purpose. They'd given him a framework for understanding what it meant to do hard things without complaining about them. Victoria Hargrove was not a hard thing. She was just a woman who didn't see him. He could live with that. The thing was, and this was the part that Ethan kept carefully away from anything resembling honest self-examination, he did see her, not in a simple way. He saw her the way he'd been trained to see people, completely. The micro-expressions when she thought no one was watching, the way she touched the small gold necklace at her throat when stressed. Always the same gesture, index finger and thumb, rolling the pendant once. The slight catch in her breathing when she walked past the framed portrait in the East Corridor, and how she never looked directly at it, only past it. He'd run the building's background check files his first week. The portrait was Victor Hargrove Sr., her ex-father-in-law. She'd married his son David at 21, divorced at 23, spending the 14 months since building Hargrove Industries into something that bore the family name, but none of its legacy. She'd built it herself. The company had nearly folded twice in the first year. She'd sold personal assets, restructured twice, and held on. The woman who waved him away like furniture had built something from almost nothing at 24. He found that, and he would have denied this under interrogation. Quietly, impressive. She still didn't know his name. March brought the incident with the revolving door. It was a Tuesday early, 7:30 a.m., and the lobby was nearly empty. Victoria arrived ahead of schedule, which happened maybe once a month. She was coming through the revolving door, moving fast, already on her phone, her pink blazer flaring slightly with her stride, and she hit the door at the exact wrong moment to encounter a delivery cart being maneuvered through by a courier who'd been told to use the service entrance and hadn't. The cart caught the door. The door lurched. Victoria stumbled. Ethan was across the lobby. He covered the distance in about 2 seconds, which he'd been told looked alarming to people who weren't expecting it. And he caught her arm before she hit the floor. She grabbed his forearm. He steadied her. She was lighter than he'd expected. Not fragile, but finely built. All compressed energy. And for 3 seconds, she was holding onto him with both hands and looking directly at his face with something he'd never seen on her before. Surprise, just surprise. Then the CEO mask came back. She straightened. She released his arm. She looked down at her phone, which had landed on the marble. Screen down. "Is it cracked?" she asked. "I don't know, ma'am. Are you hurt?" "Is my phone cracked?" He picked it up, handed it to her. Not cracked. She checked it once, nodded, and walked toward the elevator. "Thank you," she said. To her phone, essentially. To the general air. He watched her go. The courier was still frozen with the delivery cart, eyes wide. "Service entrance," Ethan told him quietly. "Every time." "Yes, sir." Sorry, sir. He spun his key, went back to his position. Fine. April, the thing with the coffee. He hadn't meant for her to see it. He brought coffee in every morning. He was a 2 cups before anything works kind of person, always had been, and he had a usual order from the cart outside. Black, 2 sugars, the kind of simple that people described as no nonsense, and he described as efficient. He also, occasionally, brought a second cup. He didn't think about why he brought a second cup. He didn't examine it. He left it at the front desk with a note for whoever arrived first on the morning rotation. And sometimes that was Marcus. And sometimes it was Janet from accounting, who was always early and always looked like she needed it. The morning in question, he left the second cup on the ledge near the elevator because he'd seen that the regular morning coffee service to the executive floor had been delayed. Their machine was being repaired. He'd gotten the facilities notification. He left the cup because whoever was first up there would need it. He was on the far side of the lobby when the elevator opened and Victoria stepped out. Early again, she'd had 6 a.m. calls with her Tokyo office. Pink blazer, beach shorts, heels, looking like she'd already won 3 arguments before sunrise, and she stopped when she saw the cup. She looked at it. She looked around the lobby. There was nobody else nearby. She picked it up. She turned it over. His name wasn't on it. He hadn't put a name on it. She stood there for a moment, holding a paper coffee cup, and something passed over her face. Not warmth, exactly, but something slightly off from her usual voltage. She took the cup with her. She never said anything about it. He never claimed it. He'd wonder later if she'd asked Marcus, or just watched him at the cart outside every morning. But the next morning, there were 2 cups from the executive coffee service on the ledge near the elevator. One of them was black, with 2 sugars. He stood there for a moment. He picked it up. He went to his post. He did not examine this. He was very deliberate about not examining it. He spun his key 3 times instead of the usual one, which was apparently what passed for emotional regulation these days. May the Singapore delegation came back. Mr. Tan arrived alone this time, without the full group, for what appeared to be a more private meeting. He passed through the lobby and stopped when he saw Ethan. "Still here?" Mr. Tan said. "Yes, sir. Good building needs good men." He paused. "She know your name yet?" Ethan smiled. "No, sir." Mr. Tan nodded slowly, the nod of a man who had watched many things unfold from a patient distance. "She will," he said, "eventually. The good ones always do. Sometimes it takes a catastrophe." He adjusted his jacket. "In my experience, it always takes a catastrophe." He went to his meeting. Ethan went back to his post. He thought about that word, catastrophe, more than he should have, over the following weeks. Summer came and the building changed its rhythms. More deliveries, more event setups on the conference floors. The federal prosecutor, Reyes, had his security escalated in June following new intelligence that Ethan wasn't fully cleared to know, but could read between the lines of well enough. Someone was paying attention to this building from the outside. The senator's daughter had been quietly relocated in July. One less variable in a building that was accumulating them. He ran 3 additional perimeter checks per day. He updated his communication protocols with the federal team. He barely slept. Victoria's schedule shifted too. She was in the building more, longer hours, weekend appearances, the kind of sustained push that suggested something large was being assembled or defended. He noticed she'd started taking the stairs sometimes instead of the elevator. 32 floors. He'd done it himself, so he knew what that felt like, and he respected anyone who chose it voluntarily. She always emerged from the stairwell door with her hair slightly disordered and her breathing elevated and her chin up, as if daring anyone to comment. No one ever did. He didn't comment. He did, however, make sure the water cooler near the stairwell door was always full. She used it every time. He watched from across the lobby and felt the very particular discomfort of someone who is doing something kind for someone who doesn't know he exists. He spun his key. He was fine. July, the moment everyone in the building talked about for weeks afterward. The law firm on the 19th floor had a client appreciation event. He was posted near the service entrance when it started. He heard it before he got there. Victoria's voice, in the register of someone who was not raising their voice, but would be justified. "Told your assistant last week that I needed those files before the 20th. The 20th is tomorrow, Ms. Hargrove, and the files are being prepared. The 20th is today. The 20th, today. With respect, today is the 19th. The silence that followed had physical weight. Ethan, who had been moving toward the sound, slowed to a stop near the edge of the corridor. The associate from the law firm, young, pale, sweating through an excellent suit, had made a navigational error from which there might be no recovery. "Today," Victoria said, "is the 20th. She was wrong. Ethan knew she was wrong because he'd marked the date in his daily security log 45 minutes ago. July 19th. He was absolutely certain. He also knew his job, in this specific moment, did not include correcting the CEO of the building's primary tenant. He started to back away. Security. He stopped. She was looking at him. Actually looking at him, directly, with her full attention, which happened so rarely that it was slightly disorienting. What's today's date? He looked at her. He looked at the associate, who had gone the particular white of someone watching a rescue boat approach. July 20th, ma'am, Ethan said. He said it completely steadily, without hesitation, while looking her in the eyes. The associate exhaled with relief. Victoria held Ethan's gaze 2 seconds. Then she turned. The files, today. She walked away. The associate sagged against the wall. Man, thank you. She was going to... Today is the 19th, Ethan told him quietly. Have the files ready by morning. The associate stared. Then why did you... Ethan was already walking away. Sometimes you didn't correct someone in front of an audience. That wasn't weakness. That was reading a room. His mother had taught him that. The SEALs had reinforced it. Victoria said something to him the next morning. Just one sentence. She said it while walking past him toward the elevator, without stopping, without looking at him directly. You didn't have to do that. He didn't answer. She didn't wait for one. But it was the first time she'd spoken to him as if he were a person rather than a function. He thought about that for most of the morning. He spun his key until Marcus told him it was getting annoying. He put the key in his pocket. He was not fine. He was something adjacent to fine. He was willing to explore that territory carefully and see what happened. August, the broadcast. Ethan had been on a scheduled day off when the call came in. Not an official call, because officially he wasn't there in any capacity that could receive official calls, but a call from his team lead, Vasquez, who said 6 words before hanging up. Turn on the news, Channel 4, now. He turned on the news. The situation. 3 armed men had taken 8 people hostage in a federal building 6 blocks from Empire Tower. The building housed, and this was the part that made Ethan's stomach go still and cold, a satellite office of the prosecutor's office, handling the organized crime case connected to the witness in his building. The situation had been unfolding for 4 hours. Negotiators were on scene. A tactical team was staging 2 blocks away, waiting for clearance. The cameras had arrived first, because they always did. He was off duty. He was absolutely off duty. He was sitting in his apartment in a t-shirt watching this on television. He was in his tactical gear and out the door in 9 minutes. He didn't think about what he did next in terms of heroism. He didn't think about it in terms of anything except a sequence of tactical decisions that each made logical sense given the information available at each point. He'd assessed the building as part of the regional security profile he'd prepared for the federal team. He knew 3 things that the staging tactical unit didn't: the ventilation layout of the 3rd floor, the fact that the northwest stairwell door had a broken hydraulic so it didn't close all the way, and, from a conversation with a federal agent 3 months prior, that the case files the hostage takers were likely after were stored in a room they would never find without help. He made contact with the federal team lead on scene. He was off duty. He had no official authority. He presented what he knew. The team led, a woman named Chen who he'd coordinated with 3 times, listened for 45 seconds, and then handed him a radio and said, "Don't do anything, I'll have to explain in a debrief." He went in the northwest door. What happened in the next 22 minutes was not spectacular in the way that television made it look. It was precise and careful and very, very loud at certain points. And when it was over, 6 of the 8 hostages were out and 2 were injured but stable. And one of the 3 armed men had been restrained by Ethan in a way that would require X-rays to fully assess. And the other 2 were in federal custody. He came out of the northwest door. The cameras caught him on the way out. He was still in the t-shirt under the tactical vest. He was carrying a 7-year-old girl who had fallen asleep somehow, impossibly, in the middle of the whole thing. He didn't know he was doing it. He found out later that he'd picked her up approximately 4 minutes into the operation because she'd been crying, and he'd said something to her, and she'd gone quiet, and then she'd apparently decided he was safe to sleep on. The cameras caught all of it. He handed the girl to the paramedics. He gave his statement to Chen. He went home. His phone started going off at approximately 11 p.m. By midnight, his name was on every major network. Commander Ethan Cole, Navy SEAL, hero. He turned his phone over. He went to sleep. He had work tomorrow. He found out what happened at Empire Tower from Marcus 2 days later. Apparently, Victoria Hargrove had watched the broadcast. Apparently, she had watched the broadcast in her office, alone. because her assistant had sent a message saying, "Ms. Hargrove, the news. You should see this. It's from our building," without realizing that might be alarming phrasing, and Victoria had turned on the television expecting a fire or a structural issue, and had instead seen Ethan walking out of a federal building carrying a sleeping child. Marcus had the story from Janet, who had it from someone in Victoria's office. The details were specific enough to have the texture of truth. Victoria had stood up from her desk. She had stood there for what her assistant estimated was a full minute. She had turned off the television. She had then asked her assistant to pull the full personnel file on the security officer, the one in the lobby, the tall one. Her assistant had come back 10 minutes later to say, "His name is Commander Ethan Cole, ma'am. He's a decorated Navy SEAL, active duty. He's been with us since November. 10 months. She had worked in the same building as this man for 10 months. Marcus told Ethan this story while they were doing the Monday morning security rotation. He told it in the calm, slightly relishing way of someone who had been waiting to tell it for 2 days. Ethan listened to the whole thing. He nodded once. "How would she look?" he asked, when she was watching. Marcus considered, like someone who just remembered something they were supposed to do a long time ago. Ethan nodded again. He spun his key once. "Okay," he said. "That's it? Okay. What else is there?" Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "Man," he said finally, "you are either the most patient person I have ever met, or you are completely insane." "Those aren't mutually exclusive," Ethan said, and went to his post. She found him on a Wednesday. He was in the lobby, mid-morning, reviewing a delivery manifest, when the elevator opened and Victoria Hargrove walked out, not toward the entrance, toward him. He looked up. She was coming toward him across the marble lobby in her pink blazer and beach shorts and heels, gold rings catching the light, necklace at her throat, and something in his chest did something he chose not to name. She stopped in front of him. "Commander Cole?" she said. He waited. She stopped, started again. "I saw the broadcast. I heard." She blinked. She hadn't expected that. "You heard. Building's got good communication. Comes with the territory." She looked at him, really looked at him, the full attention again, but different now. Slower, the way you look at something when you're trying to figure out how you missed it. "I didn't know your name," she said. He held her gaze. "I know. For 10 months. Yes." She didn't look away. He gave her credit for that. That was unacceptable. "Yes," he said. "It was." Something flickered across her face. Surprise again. He got the sense she'd expected him to say it was fine. He was not going to say it was fine. He'd been saying fine for 10 months, and it had been accurate, mostly. But this particular thing was not fine, and there was no value in pretending otherwise. "I would like—" She stopped again, the gold pendant at her throat, index finger, thumb, rolling at once. He'd seen her do this 100 times. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Apologize. To someone who didn't." She exhaled. "I'm not good at this." "I know that too," he said. She stared at him. "How much do you know?" And this was the moment. This was the exact moment where he could have kept the equilibrium, kept the professional distance, kept the careful blankness he'd maintained for 10 months. He could have said, "Enough to do my job," and stepped back and let her off the hook, and nothing would have changed. He didn't. "Your ex-husband's name is David, he said. "You were married for 2 years and divorced for 14 months. Your company nearly folded twice in the first year, and you sold your apartment to keep it alive. You touch your necklace when you're stressed, that specific one, not the others. You walk the stairs when you need to think, and you always come out looking like you're daring someone to comment." He paused. "And every morning for the last 4 months, you've left a coffee on the ledge for me. Black, 2 sugars. The lobby was quiet. Victoria Hargrove stood very still. "You knew," she said. "I know a lot of things. It's my job. You knew who I was the whole time." "Yes. And you never said anything. When I called you security, She stopped. Her jaw was tight. "When I treated you like furniture," he said, simply. "Not cruelly." She looked like she'd been hit. "Yes, I was doing my job," he said. "Part of doing it well was not being visible. You helped with that more than you probably realize. It was not kind, but it was honest, and he decided he was done with careful." She stood there for a long moment. Her hand dropped from her necklace. She looked at him with something that was working itself into focus slowly, like a photograph developing. "I don't know how to fix this," she said. "I know. Do you want me to?" He looked at her for a long time. "I think," he said, "that's the first real question you've asked me." Her breath caught, just slightly. "I'll take that as a yes," she said, very quietly. He almost smiled. "Almost. Don't push it," he said. She came back the next morning, And the morning after that, not with speeches or grand gestures. He suspected she'd burned through most of her available courage in that Wednesday conversation and was rebuilding the supply incrementally. She came back the way careful people did things, slowly, testing the ground, waiting to see if it held. The first morning she asked him his rank. He told her. She nodded and used it. The second morning she asked him how long he'd been a SEAL. He told her. She asked if he'd always been in New York. He said no. She asked where else. He said several places he couldn't fully describe. She absorbed this with the focus of someone taking notes. The third morning, she brought 2 coffees. She held one out to him. He took it. "I'm not very good at this," she said again. "You mentioned. I'm working on it." "I know," he said. "Is it?" She held her cup. She was looking at the lobby entrance, not at him. "Is it very annoying that I'm this difficult?" He thought about it, honestly. A little. She laughed. Just briefly, just a single sharp exhale, but it was real. He'd never heard her laugh before. He filed it away in the category of things he was not going to examine. "Fair," she said. September brought the first real threat. He'd been tracking an anomaly in the building's perimeter data for 2 weeks. A vehicle that appeared in the southeast corner of the parking structure on irregular intervals, always between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., always for exactly 30 to 45 minutes. Never picked up by the standard sweep because it arrived after the last check and left before the first. He'd flagged it with the federal team. They'd run the plates. The vehicle was registered to a man named Raymond Holt. Raymond Holt had no criminal record, no federal flags, no connection to the organized crime case. He worked in commercial real estate. He was 43 years old. He lived in Westchester. He also, according to a secondary search that took the federal team's analyst 2 additional days, was the former business partner of Victor Hargrove Sr. Sir, Victoria's ex-father-in-law. Ethan sat with that information for a long time. The organized crime case, the federal prosecutors, the witness in the building. These were the official reasons he was here. They remained the official reasons. But Raymond Holt, appearing in the parking structure of the building where Victoria Hargrove ran her company, at hours when the building was quiet, in a vehicle that seemed specifically timed to avoid detection, that was not a coincidence. He pulled every file he could access on Raymond Holt. What he found made him very, very still. Raymond Holt had not simply been Victor Hargrove's business partner. He had been the architect of the financial arrangement that Victoria's ex-husband, David, had used to force her out of the original Hargrove family business. The series of transactions that had left her with the name but none of the assets, and had required her to build from nothing. He had constructed it, according to the financial forensics, in a civil suit that had been settled quietly and sealed, specifically and deliberately. He had been watching her for months. He was not here because of the organized crime case. He was here because of her. Ethan made a decision. The decision required him to walk a line that he'd been very careful about for almost a year. The line between his official assignment and what was, and he was honest with himself about this, something personal. He told himself for 10 months that Victoria Hargrove was background, context, part of the building's ecosystem that he monitored as a matter of professional thoroughness. He'd been lying to himself, professionally, impressively, with the full force of his tactical training applied to self-deception, but lying nonetheless. He told Vasquez about Holt. He gave him the full picture. He recommended expanding the surveillance scope to include the threat to Victoria. Vasquez listened. Then, "Cole, anything I should know about your objectivity?" "No," Ethan said. Vasquez gave him the look of a man who'd worked with him for 7 years and knew exactly what that flat denial meant. "Expansions approved," Vasquez said. "Watch yourself." He told her he didn't have to. Strictly speaking, he could have handled the Holt situation through official channels without Victoria being aware of any of it. He could have neutralized the threat, in the bureaucratic sense, without her knowing it existed. He told her anyway. He found her in the East Corridor on a Thursday afternoon near the portrait of Victor Hargrove Sr. that she never looked at directly. She was coming out of a meeting, alone, and she had the slightly depleted look of someone who had spent 3 hours in a room full of people pretending to agree with her. "I need 5 minutes," he said. She stopped. Something in his tone registered. "Okay." He told her about Raymond Holt. He told her about the parking structure. He told her what the financial forensics showed. He told her about the civil suit she probably already knew about, and the sealed settlement, and the fact that the man who had helped architect the worst financial moment of her professional life was circling her building at midnight. like something with patience. He did not tell her he cared. He told her the facts. He told them concisely and clearly, which was how he told things that mattered. She listened without interrupting. When he was done, she was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at the portrait, actually at it, directly for the first time he'd ever witnessed. She looked at Victor Hargrove Sr., his painted face with the focused neutrality of someone who has already decided not to be afraid of this thing. How long? She asked. We believe he's been watching the building for approximately 3 months. Does he know I know? No. Good. She looked back at Ethan. What do you need from me? He looked at her. She was asking how to help, not asking him to fix it, not asking to be kept away from it, asking what role she could play. He felt something shift, deep and structural. Nothing yet, he said. Just go about your normal schedule. Don't change your routines. She nodded. Commander Cole, ma'am, thank you for telling me. It's my job, he said. She shook her head, very slightly. No, telling me the way you told me. She paused. That wasn't your job. That was something else. He didn't answer. She didn't push, but she looked at him as she walked away, in a way that made him think about what Mr. Ton had said in May about catastrophes, and eventually, and the ones worth waiting for. October, the tape. He never found out exactly how it got out. The federal team ran an investigation. The building ran an investigation. And the most likely conclusion was that a contractor with access to the security footage archive, a man who had been dismissed 2 months prior for an unrelated HR matter, had copied files before his termination and eventually sold them to a tabloid outlet that had been covering the story of Victoria Hargrove's mystery seal. The tape was 14 minutes of lobby footage. Ethan knew which 14 minutes the moment he heard it described, November through September. The greatest hits, Victoria saying, "Move the car." Victoria saying, "Make sure the regular staff aren't in the executive lounge." Victoria calling him security while looking at her phone. The Singapore moment, the July date incident, presented without the context of what happened after, which made it look like something entirely different from what it was. And at the end, because the contractor apparently had comprehensive taste, the Wednesday conversation. The whole thing. The lobby camera had picked up most of it. Him saying, like furniture. Her saying, yes. The tabloid ran it with a headline that Ethan read once and then put down. The internet, apparently, had significant feelings about it. He found out she'd seen it from Marcus again. Marcus had the chronology of events at the building. Victoria had come in that morning, had been in her office for 1 hour, and had then come down to the lobby and stood in the exact center of it, the place where the marble was slightly different, where the original architect had put a compass rose design in a different stone, and had stood there for approximately 3 minutes without moving. Did she say anything? Ethan asked. Not to me, Marcus said. She looked at your post, the empty one you were on rounds. She looked at it for a long time. Ethan considered this. Then what? Then she went back up. Her assistant says she canceled everything on her schedule for the rest of the day. Marcus paused. Cole, man. The comments on that thing. People are not being kind to her. I know. How are you about all this? Ethan thought about it. 14 minutes of footage. A year's worth of being invisible, compressed into a tabloid package and handed to the internet for judgment. He should feel something sharp, probably. Vindicated, maybe. Entitled to watch from a distance while she dealt with the consequences. He didn't feel that. He felt something closer to tired and something closer to protectiveness that he was not going to examine at any depth right now. I'm okay, he said. That's not what I asked. Marcus? Fine. Marcus held up his hands. Fine. But Cole, she's been taking the stairs again. Every hour. The whole 32 floors. I counted. He thought about that. Her in the stairwell, going up and down 32 floors, because she needed somewhere to put something that had no other container. Keep an eye on the lobby camera footage, he told Marcus. Not for her, for Holt. Yeah, Marcus said. Already on it. He went to the stairwell door. He refilled the water cooler. She found him on the roof. He didn't know how she'd gotten the access code. Probably the same way she'd gotten everything she'd ever needed, which was a combination of authority and determination that didn't particularly concern itself with procedures. But she came through the roof access door on a Thursday evening in late October when the city was going orange and cold, and he was standing at the northeast corner watching the light change. He heard the door. He didn't turn around. I'm sorry, she said, to his back, to the city. He didn't answer, not because of the footage, or not only because of the footage. She came to stand a few feet from him, not beside him, maintaining the careful distance she'd maintained since Wednesday. I was already sorry. I've been trying to figure out how to say it properly, and then this happened, and I still don't know how to say it properly, but I didn't want you to think I was only saying it because of the cameras. He turned. She was looking at the city, not at him. The wind off the roof was moving her hair slightly, and she had the collar of the pink blazer turned up against it. And her face had the quality it got in the East Corridor, the facing something directly look, the one she usually reserved for portraits and stairwells. "I know," he said. She looked at him. "How?" "Because you're not looking at the camera." She blinked, looked around. There was a camera on the roof, small, mounted on the northeast corner unit. She hadn't noticed it. She looked back at him. Something passed over her face. Something that wasn't quite a smile, but was in the same family. "You always know where the cameras are," she said. "Yes, and you came up here anyway. You were already up here." She was quiet for a moment. The city stretched out below them, amber and gray, October light on glass towers. "I keep thinking about what you said," she told him. "Furniture. I keep hearing it, and I keep trying to. I don't have a good excuse. I was someone who didn't see people. I think I've been that person for a long time, and I got very good at not noticing it." She paused. "You noticed it. I was trained to notice things. You noticed this specifically." He looked at her. "Yes," he said. "Specifically." The wind moved between them. "Is it too late?" she asked. Her voice was different, stripped of the CEO frequencies, the register that commanded rooms, just her voice. "I know I don't have the right to ask that. I want to know." Commander Ethan Cole, Navy SEAL, man who had been in firefights in 4 countries and surveillance positions in jungles and a federal building 6 blocks from here with a 7-year-old falling asleep on him, stood on the roof of Empire Tower in October and looked at this woman who was not looking away from him. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out his car key. He held it for a moment, turning it once in his fingers, the habit of 100 corridors and 100 mornings of being looked through. He put it back in his pocket. "No," he said. "It's not too late." She exhaled, long, like she'd been holding it. "I don't know how to do this," she said. 3rd time she'd said that. He was counting. "I know," he said. "We'll figure it out." She looked at him, this direct, full attention look that he'd gotten used to, from someone who'd once looked through him, and something settled in it. Something that wasn't resolution yet, not exactly, but was maybe the beginning of it. The scaffolding going up before the building. "Commander Cole." "You can call me Ethan," he said. "I think we're past the rank." Something happened in her face, something quiet and real. "Ethan," she said. He nodded. Below them, the city turned on its lights. He got the call from Vasquez at 11:47 p.m. Raymond Holt had moved, not the parking structure this time. The federal team's expanded surveillance had picked up Holt in the lobby of the building across the street, in conversation with 2 men who had connections, 2 degrees of separation, but documented, to the organized crime network tied to the witness on the 14th floor. This had stopped being about Victoria's past. This had become something else. "How fast can you be in position?" Vasquez asked. Ethan was already pulling on his jacket. 8 minutes, he said. He grabbed his key off the counter, spun it once. He went to work. He was moving fast through the service corridor when his earpiece crackled. "Chen," voice clipped and precise the way it got when things were deteriorating. "Cole, we have a complication." Holt made contact with someone inside the building, not the parking structure. Inside. He stopped moving. "Which floor?" "We're not certain. We picked up a signal from a burner phone that pinged one of our internal sensors, somewhere between floors 4 and 8. That's facilities, engineering, service staff. I know what floors 4 through 8 are." He was already rerouting. The service corridor ran parallel to the freight elevator shaft. He could be on 4 in 90 seconds. He moved. "What's the nature of the contact?" "Unknown. We intercepted the signal but not the content." Cole, a pause, which was unusual for Chen. She didn't pause. "This changes the threat profile significantly. If Holt has an inside contact, this isn't surveillance anymore." "I know. The witness on 14 may need to move tonight. Handle the witness. I'll find the inside contact." He went into the freight elevator. Floor 5, service corridor, east side. He'd walked every corridor in this building 800 times. He knew which lights flickered and which ones stayed steady. He knew which doors had hydraulics that were slow and which ones sealed tight. He knew the particular sound of the HVAC at night, the clicks and hums that were normal and the ones that weren't, the way sound traveled differently through the floors when the building was empty and when it wasn't. He heard 2 voices before he rounded the corner. He slowed. One voice was Holt's. He recognized it from the surveillance recordings, the accent, the cadence of someone who chose words carefully because they weren't entirely certain their intelligence matched their ambition. The other voice he recognized differently, more immediately, more personally. It was Marcus. He stood in the corridor for 3 seconds. 3. Complete seconds. Processing. Marcus, who had transferred from the evening rotation to days in September, exactly when Holt's parking structure appearances had begun. Marcus, who had been Ethan's best source of building gossip, of Victoria's movements, of the rhythms of who went where and when, who had told him about the tape before it went public, who had known things in advance of when he should have, and whom Ethan had never questioned because he liked him and because he'd been too focused on Victoria to notice what he was being fed. He was very still in the corridor. Then he moved. The next 4 minutes were, by his career standards, relatively straightforward. 2 men in a service corridor, one of them a threat and one of them a betrayal, and Ethan moving between them with the particular economy of someone who has done difficult things many times and has learned that the cleanest path through them is usually the simplest one. Holt tried to run. He didn't get far. Marcus didn't try to run. He stood with his hands half raised and looked at Ethan with an expression that was trying to be defiant and landing somewhere in the vicinity of ashamed. "How long?" Ethan asked him. "Cole." "How long, Marcus?" 4 months. His voice dropped. "They came to me in June. My mother is sick. The bills, I don't need the reason." He meant it, and he didn't mean it unkindly, but he also genuinely didn't need the reason right now. "The federal team is going to need to talk to you." "I know." "Were you feeding them information on the witness?" A pause that lasted half a second too long. "No, just building schedules, access patterns, who came and went. He looked at his friend, and Marcus was his friend, had been his friend for the better part of a year, had told him things that mattered, and made him laugh when the building was quiet, and felt the particular grief of someone who understands that betrayal is rarely simple. Including her. Marcus closed his eyes. They weren't going to hurt her. That's what they said. People say a lot of things. I know. Ethan held the contact point, keeping his eyes on Holt, who was restrained and quiet now. He pressed his earpiece. "Chen, I have Holt and a building contact. Floor 5, Service East. Send a team." "Copy. 2 minutes." He stood with both men and waited for the 2 minutes to pass. He kept his face professional, and his thoughts far from the fact that Marcus had been feeding information about Victoria to the man who had been circling her for months. He'd deal with that later. He was very good at dealing with things later. The federal team took 30 minutes to secure the scene. Chen arrived with her lead agent and 3 others, and they worked with the practiced efficiency of people who had run this kind of containment many times. And Ethan answered the questions he was asked and didn't answer the ones he wasn't. At 1:15 a.m., Chen found him in the lobby. "Good work," she said. It wasn't a compliment from her so much as a verification, the operational equivalent of a check mark. "Marcus," Ethan said, "we'll work with him. He wasn't deep enough to do major damage. What he gave them was mostly building logistics. But it accelerated Holt's timeline, gave him access he wouldn't have had otherwise." "Will Victoria Hargrove need to be briefed?" Chen looked at him steadily. "That's going to be delicate. She should know." Chen held his gaze. "I'll arrange a briefing tomorrow." He nodded. "One more thing. Holt's connection to the organized crime case, was it direct? Separate threads. The Hargrove connection and the crime case intersected because Holt is opportunistic. The witness on 14 is unrelated to Ms. Hargrove." He absorbed this. "So, he was always here for her?" "Yes," Chen said. "He was. He was still in the lobby at 2 a.m. when the elevator opened. He knew, before he turned, from the sound of the heels. Victoria Hargrove walked out of the elevator in her pink blazer and beach shorts at 2 in the morning, and her hair was slightly disordered, and her eyes had the particular focus of someone who has been awake for reasons that don't permit sleep. She had her phone in one hand and a coffee cup in the other, and she stopped when she saw him. "My alarm system notified me," she said. "Security event in the building. You have it connected to your phone." "I have everything connected to my phone." She looked at the lobby around them, reading it the way she read rooms when she was paying attention. "What happened?" "Raymond Holt. He's in federal custody." She held her coffee cup quietly. "Was anyone hurt?" "No." "Were you?" "No." She exhaled. "Good." She put her phone face down. "What was he going to do?" "We don't fully know. Access, information, leverage." He paused. "There'll be a full briefing tomorrow." "Was it because of me?" "Directly, just like that." He looked at her. "Yes," he said. "It was because of you." She nodded. Once, tightly, processing. "And you knew," she said. "You figured it out, and you went in after him. It's my job." "Commander Cole." "Ethan." She corrected herself so quickly, it was almost seamless. "Ethan." She looked at him with that full focus look, the one that had taken 10 months to get pointed in his direction. "I know you keep saying that. Your job. But I need you to know." She stopped. Started. "I need you to know that it doesn't feel like just a job. From where I'm standing." He was quiet. What does it feel like? He asked. She held her coffee. She looked at him. It feels like someone decided I was worth paying attention to, she said, before I deserved it. Something in his chest moved, something structural and significant. You were always worth paying attention to, he said. You just needed someone to wait until you noticed it too. The lobby was very quiet. The city outside was dark and lit at the same time, the way it always was, the way cities that never fully slept always looked from inside a lobby at 2 in the morning. Victoria Hargrove took a step toward him, just one step. He didn't step back. I'm not good at this, she said. 4th time. He'd lost count somewhere, but now he had it again. I know, he said. I'm going to keep making mistakes. Probably. Are you staying in the building? He thought about the assignment. 18 months minimum. He was at 11. 7 months left on paper, and then whatever came after paper. For now, he said. And after now? He looked at her. The gold rings. The necklace she wasn't touching right now for once. The pink blazer in the lobby light at 2 in the morning. We'll figure that out, he said. Together, she looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Then she held out the coffee cup. He took it. Black. 2 sugars. He stood in the lobby of Empire Tower at 2 a.m. and drank coffee with Victoria Hargrove, who had learned his name and then some. And outside the city turned slowly toward morning, and neither of them spoke, and neither of them needed to. And somewhere between the silence and the coffee and the particular quality of that October night, something that had been careful and patient for a very long time finally let itself be. Just slightly, just enough. The beginning was enough. The federal briefing happened at 10 a.m. in a conference room on the 28th floor. 2 floors below, where the witness Ethan had spent 11 months protecting was quietly preparing to be relocated to a more secure facility. Victoria arrived on time, which he'd expected, and alone, which he'd also expected. She was in the pink blazer. She had the gold rings. She had the necklace, which she touched exactly once when Chen laid out the full scope of Raymond Holt's surveillance operation. The parking structure, the burner phone contacts, the financial forensics connecting him to the sealed civil settlement. And then Victoria's hand came down and stayed down. And she listened to the rest with the focused stillness of someone who has decided that this information is going to be useful rather than devastating. Chen covered the full timeline, the parking structure, Marcus's role in the information pipeline, the federal charges coming for Holt. When she finished, Victoria asked 3 questions, each precise, practical, exactly right. Chen, professionally immune to being impressed, paused before answering the 3rd one. Victoria stood, thanked her by name, and walked to the door. She stopped there. Commander Cole, she said, without turning. A moment. Chen looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at Chen. I'll get the paperwork started, Chen said, and left. Victoria was standing at the window when he reached her. The city was November clear below them, that particular cold sky brightness that made everything look sharper than it was. He's been watching me for 3 months, she said. Yes, and you found it in 2 weeks. The anomaly was there. I was looking. She was quiet for a moment. Why were you looking? For that specifically? He considered the honest answer. He gave it, because something about his pattern felt personal, not operational. The timing, the intervals, it had the signature of someone with a specific fixation, not a broad surveillance goal. Personal. She said the word like she was weighing it. He blamed me for what happened with the company, with David. She paused. I left with the name and nothing else, and I built something with it. And I think that made it worse for him, that I didn't stay down. Yes, Ethan said. That's what the file suggests. She turned from the window. She looked at him with the direct, full attention gaze he'd been on the receiving end of for 2 months now, the one that had taken 10 months to arrive. You were protecting me, she said, even before you knew he was there. I was protecting the building. Ethan, he stopped. You were protecting me, she said again. Not a question this time. He held her gaze. Yes, he said. She nodded. Once. The way she nodded when she'd confirmed something she already knew but needed to hear said directly. Okay, she said. Good. November. His assignment had 7 months left on its official timeline. Vasquez told him 3 days after Holt was arrested. The assignment was being extended through spring. The witness relocation was complete, but the Holt case had opened a secondary investigation, and the building remained relevant. He could have declined. He didn't. He told himself it was professionalism. He knew exactly how true that was. He told Victoria over coffee on a Thursday morning, which had become, without either of them deciding it, the format for conversations that mattered. 7 more months, she said. Approximately. She held her cup. She was looking at the lobby entrance, which was the direction she looked when she was thinking rather than performing. And after the extension, assignment ends. I report back to my team, wherever they need me. She nodded slowly. She was quiet for a moment. Do you want that? Going back? He thought about it honestly. I want to do my job well. Going back is part of doing my job. That's not what I asked. He looked at her. I know. She looked at him. I'm asking, she said carefully, what you want, not what the job requires. What Ethan Cole specifically wants. He was quiet for a long moment. I'm working on that question, he said. I'll let you know when I have an answer. She studied him. Something crossed her face. Not quite a smile, not quite something else. In the range of things that were being figured out. Okay, she said. I can work with that. December. The lobby smelled like pine. Victoria started coming down more often, afternoons, the occasional evening, with a practical frame that they both understood and neither commented on. She told him about David one afternoon, not the file version. The real one, the moment she'd understood the arrangement, was designed to leave her with nothing, and the 48 hours after, alone in an apartment she was about to sell. I was 23. I didn't know if it would work. I just knew I wasn't letting it stay a loss. It didn't, he said. No, but you get good at not needing people. Good at it so long, you forget you were ever any other way. You remember now, he said, starting to. January. The case against Holt moved into its formal charging phase, which required Victoria to provide a deposition. Ethan drove her to the federal building in his Corvette. She'd asked if he'd drive, not in the way of someone who needed a driver, but in the way of someone who wanted company and had found an acceptable frame for requesting it. She got in and looked at the interior. This is a very serious car. Yes, ma'am. You're doing the ma'am thing again. Force of habit. Break it. Okay. He pulled out. Victoria. She uncrossed her arms and looked out at the city. At a red light, she said, I used to think quiet people were hiding something. Sometimes they are. And sometimes it's just what they are. I'm not very quiet, she said. I know. Does that work for you? He thought about 10 months of watching her from across a lobby. A roof in October, the city turning on its lights. Yeah, he said. It works. The deposition took 3 hours. He waited in the corridor. When she came out, she looked like someone who had spent 3 hours being precise and exact about things that were also painful, which was exactly what she'd done. She looked at him, and he stood up and she said, I need to walk. They walked 6 blocks in January, cold. Her in the pink blazer and a coat chosen for reasons other than warmth. Him in his jacket. And she talked, not about the deposition, not about Holt, but about a restaurant she'd gone to in San Francisco at 22, and a building in Chicago she wanted to put a bid on, and a problem her VP of operations had been unable to solve for 3 weeks that she'd figured out in the shower that morning. He listened. He asked one question about the Chicago building that made her stop walking and look at him and say, How do you know that much about commercial real estate? I know something about a lot of things, he said. Surveillance requires understanding environments. You've been studying my business. I've been studying the building's primary tenant, he said. Standard protocol. She looked at him for a moment. Then she started walking again. Of course you have, she said, and there was something in her voice that was not annoyed and not quite amused, and was in the particular territory between those things that he was learning to read. The Chicago building is a good opportunity, he said. The zoning variance issue your VP flagged is resolvable. The precedent is from a 2019 case. She stopped walking. There's a 2019 zoning case your legal team should have, he said. She stared at him. Ethan, she said. Yes. Are you? She stopped. You've been doing research. For me, on things that have nothing to do with security. He considered this. The building's primary tenant's business stability is relevant to the security profile, he said. She looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Her breath was visible in the cold air. The January street moved around them. You are completely impossible, she said. I've been told. By whom? Vasquez, my team lead, my mother. In that order, usually. She laughed, not the brief exhale from the lobby, a real one, full, surprised out of her. He'd been working toward that laugh for 3 months without quite admitting it. Your mother sounds like she has good judgment, Victoria said. The best I've encountered, he said, professionally or otherwise. She was still smiling, just slightly, just enough. I'd like to meet her someday, she said simply. She looked at him as if checking whether he'd noticed. He'd noticed. Someday, he said. They walked back in the January cold. Their shoulders were almost touching by the time they reached the entrance. Not quite, not yet, but almost. The last morning of his official assignment, Ethan arrived at Empire Tower at 7:30 a.m. and found a coffee on the ledge by the elevator. Black, 2 sugars, and a note. 1 line, in handwriting that was decisive and slightly impatient, which was exactly what he would have expected. Still figuring it out. But I know your name. He stood in the lobby with the coffee and the note and the particular quality of early morning light on marble. And he thought about November and the car and the leaves that had still been on the trees. He put the note in his jacket pocket. He spun his key once. He went to work. And for the first time in 11 months, fine was not the word for it. What it was had no easy name yet. The beginning of something that would take time and mistakes and conversations in lobbies and a few arguments that would need 32 floors of stairs to process. Scaffolding still not a building, but it was real, and it was his, enough to work with.